3, 2, 1. Welcome to Conversation. A pleasure, personal pleasure. Welcome to the program. A dear friend of mine. I got to figure it out. We got to get it narrowed down. It goes back about 1,000 years that we've been friends and colleagues, and that's Stephen Eric Bronner, Ph.D., professor of history and other matters. And Stephen, so good to see you and welcome you to the set.
My
One
pleasure.
More time. Yeah.
Always a pleasure.
How long have we known each other? It seems to me forever almost, but I guess it's shorter than that. About 10 years or so, I guess.
Yeah, I would say at least. Yeah, at least
and
10 years.
You're at Rutgers now.
Yeah.
Or just
I do political science.
Yeah, you're political
history,
science.
yeah.
But share just quickly your background. We want to talk about Brixis and so forth, other matters, but your background.
Well, I started out actually doing political philosophy, and I was interested in revolutions, and I was interested in the labor movement, and so on. And that sort of led to a natural interest in human rights. And so I did a lot of work with human rights. I've been to Syria, and I've been to Iraq, and to Iran. And I've worked with U.S. Academics for Peace. I'm the chair of that.
Yes, indeed,
and also work with Conscience International. And now I'm the director of global relations at the Center for the Study of Genocide and Human Rights at Rutgers.
At Rutgers,
Yeah, and then I'm also Board of Governors Chair of Political Science.
What does that mean, Board of Governors Chair?
I have no idea. No, it's just it's just the name of it.
Is it like distinguished professor or something?
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
I
appreciate that.
Yeah.
I
got a friend,
that.
Norton Mizvinsky, who's a distinguished professor. And it's a mark of good scholarship and so on. You were in history, right?
No, politics. Political science.
Where did you study?
But I did do a lot of political history.
Yeah, they're sort of connected and joined at the hip, I guess.
I did my work first at City College of New York back in the 60s. And then I got my, I went to Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley. Then I went to Germany for a year or so. I was at the Universität Tübingen, it's called. And then I finished my degree, and the rest is history, so to speak.
Tübingen, is it?
Tübingen.
Tübingen?
Tubingen. Yeah, actually, it's more than a town. It's this used to be a center for philosophy and theology.
Wow. Okay.
And a real center, and it's right near Stuttgart.
That was part of your doctoral training or postdoc or what?
I studied philosophy there.
Okay. Good. Yeah.
But some of the great names studied in Tübingen. Hegel, the great philosopher of history, his friend Schelling, the greatest poet. Yeah.
Hegel, Schelling, but somebody well known. I mean, instead of just people that have no reputation.
It's a
like
question.
A small little thing like Hegel.
A little
Making
thing.
A joke. Yeah.
And then a lot of people say he's the greatest poet ever, and that is Hölderlin. And the three of them lived in the same apartment.
No.
Yeah.
Where you did?
And not where I did, but they did.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And it must have been quite a scene. Quite a scene. And I studied when I was there with a number of people, not that well known here. One was Ernst Bloch, who was
I think I know that name.
He's the great philosopher of utopia.
Okay.
And of hope. He had a tremendous influence on liberation theology.
Okay, huge.
Yeah, huge. And I studied also with the great literary critic Hans Meyer. There were wonderful teachers there. I even heard the former Pope.
Really?
Yeah. Ratzinger.
I wouldn't have heard him. You heard he gave a talk or something?
Yeah, he came to Tübingen.
Yeah.
And he gave a talk on a philosopher I was interested in, was important for my dissertation. That's why I went. I never heard of the guy. And
you were at dissertation level then?
Yeah.
I see, right.
And so he came in the theology department, gave a talk, and I went and I listened, and I got to say, It was a brilliant talk.
Oh, right.
I mean, it's not my kind of thing, Roman Catholicism, but it was a brilliant talk.
Were you able to hear it in another language, or was it
in German?
It was in German. Can you handle German that well?
Yeah.
You can. How did it happen that you could handle German? That's a pretty big job. I don't mean to pry.
No, it's okay. I actually spoke German before I spoke English, even though I was born here.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up in Washington Heights, the northern part of Manhattan.
Yeah.
And that was the center of German Jewish exiles.
Okay.
And they populated the entire neighborhood.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
And
were they associated particularly at any particular university or anything?
No. These were working people.
Working people. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
But educated.
Reasonably so. The real intellectuals, the famous intellectuals whom you would know, Hannah Arendt and people like this, they lived more on the Upper West Side.
And were they of German back?
Yeah.
Okay.
And rarely did the twain meet, if I can put it that way.
Right.
But I learned German as a kid.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
And
that's interesting.
And I have to say that experience, I think it left sort of an imprint. It led me to be very interested in human rights.
Really?
And politics. I mean, you grow up, and every second person I ran into, I mean, exaggerating a little, was in some way in a concentration camp.
Wow.
So, there was sort of a natural progression.
Yeah.
And many people from the neighborhood
because they had been in opposition to
no, simply because they were Jews.
Because they were Jewish.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Most of them were not political in my neighborhood. Some were, but not. But most weren't. They were simply Jews, mostly, as was the case in Germany at that time. Liberals, social democrats,
who were under threat in.
And they were anti-Nazi. They would have been anti-Nazi anyway.
Yeah.
But as Jews, they were really anti-Nazi.
Right.
So.
What a horror! What a horror was that? Yeah. That old time, it was just such a. I saw a little thing on television. They thought he was a drug addict.
Who?
Hitler.
I don't know. I never.
He was strung out on speed. Or something.
There were. I mean, it's true that one of his major people was. Semi-addicted, but that's because of a war experience, World War I.
Not he himself?
I don't think so.
Really? It's interesting.
No. I think personally that it's like a lot of the discussions we have today over, I don't know, Saddam Hussein or Assad.
Right.
They're nuts. They're these evil geniuses. They're this, they're that.
Yeah.
At a certain level, all of them were dictators in power, opposed to liberalism, opposed to social democracy, and their desire to hold on to power, the desire to maximize their power, coupled with racism, anti-Semitism, led to this. But Hitler was a very smart politician.
He was a spellbinder, though. I mean, he could give these talks that were just incredible. It's like, you see the film footage of him.
Yeah. What's very interesting is Hitler spoke a kind of Austrian German.
Did he really?
Yeah,
you could make a distinction of that?
Yeah.
Wow, not very many people would be able to do that.
In Germany. In Germany. Right. It would be like talking, having a southern accent when you.
Right.
I mean, it's not. Let's put it this way: it's not elegant.
But a lot can be conveyed that way in terms of association with the audience.
Yeah.
I mean,
But Hitler spoke in slogans.
Yeah. Right.
And he sort of set the stage for many modern dictators. He didn't speak about anything. He was anti the system, obviously, but it wasn't very clear what it was he wanted.
How do you see Trump?
Well, this is a tough question. Trump, I mean, is not. The United States. No, I know what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think Trump is an incredible demagogue.
Well, so
he does. Yeah, he does. Like most fascists. I mean, he's not a fascist in that old sense. He's probably a neo-fascist. But he too speaks in slogans.
Yeah.
And this is the famous thing, he speaks in sound bites.
Yeah.
But it's not just sound bites. It's the sound bites convey something.
Yeah.
And what they convey, obviously, is a kind of provincialism, a kind of dyed-in-the-wool xenophobia, and, of course, the racism.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, my friends in Europe, I think many of them who are really smart political people,
I'm sure,
they underestimate the racism in the United States. It's really interesting.
Okay, we ought not to do that. We ought to be careful of that or understand it, and you do understand it.
Well, I think most of us.
That's something we'd like to talk about in the program.
I think most of your audience knows this. If you think about the Tea Party and you think about all the things that, the attack on voting rights, the attack on welfare rights, the sort of the general type of cultural trend towards racism and disrespect and so on for President Obama. I mean, if the shoe fits, the shoe fits. And that's real racism. I saw posters of, and you can find this on the internet. Think of a family of monkeys. And the heads of Obama and his family were superimposed on the monkeys.
Really?
Then I saw another one of the White House. And the green lawn in front, full of watermelons. I mean, we've been around a long time.
And you and I, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
And we've seen a lot of presidents who created enormous hatred and disrespect, and so Lyndon Johnson, fair or unfair, Johnson, Bush, and so on. I've never seen anything like this. What Obama's gone through. And you think of the what's interesting, I think, is that the racism is pushed in a different way, a new way. In other words, we're cutting the welfare state because we have to foster individual responsibility.
Right.
We're narrowing voting rights because we want to guard against fraud. We oppose gay marriage because it's anti-tradition or anti-religious. It's not the old kind of racism anymore. Although that often comes to the fore. That still comes too. But I think for the future, what we were talking about before, about present and future, for the future it's going to be more and more policies that target the old groups, blacks, Latinos, women, gays, and so on, but it's going to have a new rhetoric behind it. And in a certain way, I think that Trump is employing that new rhetoric. He would never simply say, "No, I'm not a racist. I'm opposed to immigration. I support profiling Muslims, not because they're Muslims, because they're terrorists, or because there's a strong terrorist community."
I'm wondering, coming out of that, if we can, I'm of a mind that a great deal of everything in the human condition has to do with material reality and economics, and the economic condition, material conditions in which people find themselves, as opposed to love and other kinds of values and so forth, which are all want to be taken into account. But we had suffered that great implosion of the economy in 2008. I mean, it was a mess. They had made a real mess out of it, and it was a big, the biggest thing since the Depression. So there was that, and then there came up to be the election in 2010, and there was a great deal of discontent given the fact that there had been such a shakeup of the things economically that people were very threatened, and they took the Tea Party came out of that context that was essentially probably based in economic insecurities that came out of that.
Well,
and then they built this irrational Tea Party thing with Sarah Palin and all that kind of stuff.
Of course.
It was absurd.
It was absurd, but what
To
I
me,
think
it
is,
seemed absurd.
you know, the teacher I mentioned before, Ernst Bloch,
Yeah.
he had a great line which said that man does not live by bread alone, especially when he doesn't have any. And what he meant by that was
Right.
that there's always ideology mixed into the economics.
Yeah.
You know, this idea that it's simply the economy, stupid, like Clinton says, it's not that.
I probably think
let me
that.
give
I
an-
probably think that too much. I'm talking to myself. Yeah.
No, but consider. You must know people, I know some, who, well, I'll give you a very direct example. This fellow is a contractor, right?
Yeah.
Makes pretty good money. He makes
Right.
about, I would say about 60, 70,000 a year. It's not great, but it's okay. And so he's on roofs. He's working with hammers.
He's actually out working.
Yeah, he's out working.
Not just. Yeah.
So he has an insurance policy
Yeah.
with a $5,000 deductible,
Oh.
which means until you reach $5,000, there's no insurance.
Yeah. Right.
So Obama's Obamacare thing comes along.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is also costing him a fortune.
Yeah.
No. I'm opposed to it.
Yeah. Right.
So you ask yourself, why economically?
Yeah.
I mean, of course you're in support of it.
Yeah. Right.
I was talking to another friend of mine who was a psychologist, social psychologist, and she said, well, the problem's this. The problem for him is those black people get the insurance too. I think that makes sense. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Very often, ideology is a material interest.
Yeah.
We talk constantly about the economy, but very often we suspend economic interests for stupid ideological interests.
Yeah.
I'm almost willing to say,
Is that
I
got
wish it
wrapped
were
up in
more.
identity or something, or what
I
do you
think
think that is?
yeah.
From identity politics or identity?
Well, think about
identification.
think
of
about
self,
Bre-
or-
think about Brexit.
Yeah. We want to talk about. We
Yeah.
got it up on the screen. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There's a Union Jack.
Yeah.
So England votes to withdraw from the
Just a couple days ago,
European Union. It flips everybody out. What are they scared of? They're scared of immigration. Then there's the debate, are they scared of Polish immigration or Islamic immigration? In my book, The Bigot, I always argued
Yeah,
that...
right. I remember that book.
Yeah. I argued that the bigot never hates one group. He always hates clusters of groups.
All right.
And they can shift around.
Yeah.
But so far, I haven't heard anyone in the United States begin to talk about the failings of the EU. That is to say, what the European Union did was it started out basically as an economic union. And what it did, in the process of developing it into a political body, it spawned ever more technocratic, cosmopolitan liberals.
That's true. That is true. Yeah, right. Yeah.
And in terms of the euro, a lot of people suffered. A lot of people suffered, going back earlier. But what the European Union never did was capture the heart of Europeans. They never felt themselves.
Is that right?
I think
you're
that's
familiar
right.
with the scene on the ground.
I
right?
think
Okay,
that's
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
There's people refer to themselves as French, German, Italian, whatever have you, and only secondarily do they consider themselves as European. And this is the fault of the European Union. They made absolutely no, or they made hardly any, developed hardly any programs that pushed cultural politics of integration.
Cultural politics.
Cultural politics.
Yeah.
You know, and the reason I think is very simple. The reason is that they were technocrats. They just didn't think this was important.
Do they think technocrat is the mark of the future or something, or that and you could look at the
you can
internet
look at
and all the things that are going on. It certainly is a big swing toward the technocratic aspects of society, is it not?
And one of the things
I mean, the power is going that way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think people are still swayed very much by cultural concerns and cultural symbols. It could be in terms of identity. It could also be in terms of cosmopolitanism.
Yeah.
The most rapid growing movement probably in the world, the most inspirational one surely, is human rights.
Okay.
I mean, you think of think of the anti-communist revolutions, and you think of the Arab Spring, and you think of the progressive movements in Africa. All of them basically want the same thing. They wanted a liberal republic that was basically secular, and they wanted, in some ways, their civil liberties guaranteed, and they wanted multiple parties and multiple elections, and they wanted some control over their future. One of the big mistakes we make is, I think we make, is in this discussion, is liberalism or liberal republicanism purely Western? Right?
Okay,
now, obviously, most of it was formed here, the idea of the republic and so on. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have relevance to other cultures and other individuals. In fact, I would even say the way you guarantee your identity, the more that the liberal rule of law and the more that democracy rules is operative, I mean, for real, the better the chance of engaging in the pursuit of your own identity. You know, whether you're gay, whether you're Latino, what have you.
And then that's coming out of European roots, is it? No, or it's identified with that.
It's mostly identified with
the
that.
Enlightenment, or you know, going back to the Enlightenment,
would be
it's good for the world and that kind of thing, and is perhaps.
But what's interesting, I also did a book on the Enlightenment.
Yeah, I know you did.
Reclaiming the Enlightenment. Yeah. But it's become really apparent, especially in the research that's been done since that came out. Virtually every country and virtually every, certainly every region has had its own enlightenment. You think of Iran. This occurred at the turn.
Iran goes back 5,000 years.
Yeah, but I mean a modern one.
Old culture.
Modern. Aside from that, of course, they had the great figures like Hafez and Rumi and so on, especially Hafez. But you know, in 1906, they had a strong move towards constitutionalism, a strong attempt. I'm not saying it always succeeds. In China, you had the May 4th movement, which was grounded sort of in the cities. In Latin America, you have figures like Simón Bolívar and José Martí. These were all Enlightenment figures.
Well, it was coming out of the Enlightenment, which was a major thing going on in the world.
I think we apologize much too much for this.
Apologize for something that was a good thing that has universal implications.
Yeah, universal implications.
Understanding and aspiration toward.
Exactly, and
so why don't we just proclaim that as something worthy of being taken on in a universalist way, rather than being attacked by so many retrograde forces? You think around the world?
I think you're I couldn't have said it better. I mean, and I think that there is a kind of, let me put it this way, narrow identity politics.
Okay.
Right, a really narrow one. And with its own bureaucracy, with its own lobbyists, with its own educational vision, which wants to speak to its own particular clientele. If that makes sense.
Yeah, well, you can gain some political power that way. Yeah.
I mean, this is certainly not someone like President Obama.
No.
But you go back within the African American tradition, there are many rotten people, just like in the Jewish tradition. There are many rotten major figures. And when you look at a culture, I think, you have to choose, when you look at that culture, you have to choose which traditions are most valuable to you.
I don't quite understand. There's rotten people in what tradition?
Oh, I think anyone has that.
Any
particular culture
has bad people in it.
Yeah, you're going to have good guys, you're going to have bad guys.
Okay, yeah.
You're going to have nationalist, provincial characters, maybe like Marcus Garvey.
Yeah, okay.
And you're going to have great figures like King.
Yeah.
Or even in a certain way, Malcolm X.
Yeah, absolutely, that's intellectual particularly.
Yeah, and Malcolm at the end of his life was very committed to the UN and to, a multiracial Islamic standpoint.
Yeah.
But in the Jewish tradition, that was also the case. I mean, there were figures like Jabotinsky, who was a terrorist, basically.
Well, setting up the beginning of Israel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
On the other hand, you have figures like Einstein and Hannah Arendt, and
they were of a different cut.
To me, the way you choose among the traditions is to ask which of the sub-traditions within the broader cultural tradition best fosters cosmopolitanism, human rights.
So what are the overriding things that one would look for in terms of an evolutionary process of social process on this planet for to be encouraged? The principles are derived from where, and what is the condition in evolutionary terms of humanity's position at this particular time in an evolutionary sense? I mean, is it a time of qualitative transformation that is coming willy-nilly or with consequences that have political ramifications, both identity and otherwise? Or is it a time of consolidation of what has been? Or
let me use the Middle East as an example.
Please do. It's very important. Yeah.
Or even beginning now with 9/11. When 9/11 happened, the general line was, this has completely changed reality. This is something.
It was a kind of biggie.
Yeah, super biggie.
Yeah.
And after this, it's going to be different.
I
mean, the general view.
Right. Okay, yeah, right. Or signaling something.
In one sense, it was. I can remember very well when in political science departments, the guys who studied the Middle East were off in a corner somewhere. Said, the Middle East, who cares about that? Israel's that big. And now they care. And the Middle East programs have flourished.
Since 9/11.
In other words, we've now taken, no matter how you cut it, the Middle East is now taken seriously. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And maybe even too seriously.
You had a group called the neocons that had a good deal to do with that.
Yeah. But I don't think it was just the neocons. I think it was, if you like, an evolutionary position. The world got bigger. Right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, the way in which politics is carried out, the logic of politics and the logic of power, that's remained relatively the same, I think, in my view. So you can have both at the same time. You can have progress and stasis, or progress even in regression at the same time.
So are you optimistic, pessimistic for the human prospect? Or how do you think, or do you bother to think along those lines? I mean, I tend to think that this is a time of qualitative transformation, perhaps. I mean, it's coming exponential. The technological capability to have information systems and so forth. There's something like a quickening, and it's coming to a point where the potentiality for good or ill in a certain measure, certainly is, like on weapons way of thinking. The weapons have become ungodly, destructive, maybe even species lethal in their capability. That's a major marker in a certain sense.
In a way, yeah.
And on the other hand, you got a capability of providing a technologically augmented capability, however it's to be realized, and which has an equally existentially significant ability to bring a great deal of benefit materially to a vaster number of people than has ever been possible ever in the history of mankind in a way that is qualitatively new. So we live in an unusually pregnant time is what I'm trying to get at. It seems to me, and it's hard to think 10,000 generations for humanity. This is a defining generation, some sort of qualitative term, or how do we deal with where we stand evolutionarily?
Well,
or is it not worth talking about?
Let's use your example, right, which I think is a good one. Technology has the potential to produce these, or has produced these terrible weapons, on one hand. It's also produced remarkable developments in the field of medicine and all kinds of stuff.
And capabilities.
And capabilities.
And latent capabilities.
And latent capabilities.
In both cases, they're latent.
It may even be that, I don't know. I don't know enough about this stuff. But I was certainly told when I was in Iran that one of the primary reasons for their concern with nuclear energy was for hospitals. Now, as I say, I don't know enough about this, but it stands to reason. It's perhaps there's something to it. You can get two results from the same kind of research.
Right.
And it seems to me what discussions about are we moving forward or are we moving backward? What they often tend to do is to make things very comfortable for ourselves, because what they do is remove the need for choice. In other words, if you want things to come out all right, you have to make them come out all right.
Okay.
And if you don't make them come out all right,
it's your fault.
Yeah. And to
that's
this
what we
extent,
want to get at. Who's to blame?
Well,
or who's to be credited?
Well, obviously, if you think of society, there are various political movements, conflicting interests, conflicting principles, and the like. What I think our general project is in media or in education is what you want to do is give people the tools to make decisions, not simply objectively. This is ridiculous. But no, normatively.
Okay.
In other words, what kind of world do you want to see, and what kind of policies would best push that, bring that about?
Right.
Not absolutely, but in a general way. What do you think?
Yeah.
And that kind of thinking, I believe, is not popular enough among pedagogues. We have to be balanced. We have to have one side. We have to have the other. So you have some idiot position put forward on
against
cultural climate, climate change, and then you have 100 Nobel Prize-winning scientists. And this is the same. It's just your opinion. That's ridiculous.
A lot of that, really.
And I think part of what we want to do is develop a greater appreciation of science, a greater respect for intellectuals, a greater openness to other cultures, which is definitely lacking in the United States, for all its congratulations about self-congratulation about the melting pot and so on.
I was very happy that the thing with Iran went through. Last time we spoke, it was a big in contention and everything like that.
It was great.
But he's to be applauded for that.
That is one of the most important things of his.
I think so too.
I mean, in a way, even more so than
the president, of course.
President Obama. As much as any economic concern, as much as Obamacare, that was really crucial.
That was a biggie.
That was a biggie. And that's in a certain way that's what I'm talking about. one has to make the effort to do that. One can't say, "Oh, this is utopian."
Yeah.
You don't know if it's utopian until you try.
Right. That's true.
You know,
That's true,
and in fact, I think that any kind of political position you take is inspired by certain ideals, which are unrealizable. Yeah.
That are unrealizable.
Yeah. Whether it's, for example, I don't think you can simply identify freedom with any regime.
That's sort of a biggie.
Yeah,
I
right?
think that's probably been
exactly
proclaimed in front of caves in the old days.
But still, we want to work, I would think, progressive people want to work towards a freer world.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's true we're not going to get a one-world society. That's true. But I can see beginning to talk about a bigger world than what we have.
Now, what about why don't we get the thing up there with the Union Jack and all that, Brexit? What's going on? What does it mean?
This is a good example.
I saw people talking now, all the Britain's going to go away, so all the power will go into Germany, and some people are going to be looking back over the recent history of Germany with some chagrin of all the power is going to be in Germany, where
I think
we had
power.
The First World War, and we had a Nazi thing, and maybe it's not such a good idea that all power will reside in Berlin.
Certainly not. That's a
you
problem.
Understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. Old habits die hard, right? But it seems to me that's part of the problem with the European Union.
Yeah,
people
what's going to offset the British influence?
Let me put it this way.
What's going to be the outcome of it?
Clearly, there is this fear of immigrants, whether Polish or Arab, East European. No, in England.
England. It's happening all over the world. You got such a mess in the Middle East. It's horrible.
The other thing,
largely from our own making, it would seem to me. We invaded Iraq. I mean, the biggest mistake made in the last couple decades, it would seem to me.
Right. We have this. There is this wave of immigration, and that's really new. You're completely right.
Yeah. Horrible what's happening in Syria.
Yeah.
Or Libya. Libya also.
Sure.
And that was at the behest of Hillary.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
That made me really angry because I had a strong interest.
I know
I counted him a friend.
Yes,
it's a
Gaddafi.
Yeah, but anyway, that's another sidebar.
But I think with Brexit, what people are concerned about, the economics, nobody really knows.
Okay.
I mean, but what we do know is that the threat of exit. What the European technocrats are scared of is that first England, then Greece, then Italy. In other words, that there would be a chain reaction, almost like the Arab Spring.
Oh, right.
If you think about it.
Yeah, right. Okay, interesting.
But here we have it again. The ideological inspiration for this, not simply the money stuff. The ideological inspiration is, we're Brits. We're not Europeans.
Right.
We have a set idea of what Europe is.
Yeah.
We don't want these Eastern Asiatics these Arabs coming in and polluting it.
Yeah.
And there's a sense here that now here's the way it works with the economics. If we have an economic downturn, we can't look at ourselves, so we look at others.
Okay. Yeah.
In other words, the fault of the economic downturn
is
that we have too many immigrants.
It's scapegoating. Yeah.
Scapegoating, exactly. It's an old routine, and the problem is it's very difficult to argue against this stuff rationally. This is like Donald Trump, and so the only way you can really argue it is by fear.
By what fear?
By fear.
Yeah, right.
And it seems
the
to me
handmaiden of fascism.
And that was fear was pushed by the right, and the rise of right-wing parties all over Europe, all of whom seek an exit from the EU. But fear is also being used by the left.
Is it? Yeah, okay, yeah.
In other words, there's no
Yeah.
sort of rational explanation. What makes the EU so important?
Yeah.
What do you get out of it?
Yeah.
What should you be getting out of it? How can it be improved? It said things like that. No, it's instead, listen, you're going to blow the whole damn, you're going to blow Europe up.
You're going to blow the whole chance up.
Yeah,
or
if you pull out. Oh, the economy is going to go to hell in a basket. It's not clear.
No.
It's simply not clear. Yeah, you may have to devalue the pound or devalue the drachma if Greece would pull out and develop its own.
But apparently, a lot of people in a lot of places are hurting. There's a lot of people.
Exactly, it may not be
in order to get a field where this kind of stuff can find root.
The euro for the Norman people, was a disaster. I mean, it's almost impossible to argue the other way. But now the European Union stuck with it.
Yeah,
that's what that was part of the original enterprise. I mean, there has to be in some way a control over the euro that doesn't simply rely on the banks.
What's going to be the overall economic effect if as there 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now of the leaving of the European Union by Britain, if it comes to be, and what's going to be the effect of that overall for the people of that region?
I'm not sure it's.
I mean, is there any way of knowing?
No.
There's different guesses about
the usual rap is, well, Britain's bargaining position as an economic power is going to slip. It's not very strong to begin with.
I don't know what the situation is.
I mean, England's a little country.
Yeah, but the England, you see, listen, I'm talking this away because I've said this to you. I'm in the deep because I'm a white, Anglo-Saxon, Protestant, heterosexual, male, with the name Harold.
And you're the enemy.
No, but we are the British. We're the only ones who ever set up a worldwide empire. It was Rome.
The sun, the sun never sets,
and the sun never set, and so we're associated with the established the established system in place that is not doing well for most of the people, and everybody's against.
And culturally, I think this
and
is
Harold
where
was the king of the Anglo-Saxons.
Harold certainly was.
1066 and all that. How would you like to have that kind of a background you have to live down?
That's tough.
No, I'm making a joke in a way.
I know.
But
I got the.
But there was some sort of a thing done by the British.
And I think you're right in a certain way. England has never really come to terms with the loss of its empire.
Well, maybe.
Culturally.
Yeah, right.
And certainly this is part of the cultural enterprise of the EU.
Yeah. Okay, it is, you think that?
I do. And
because then how much was she responsible for the Enlightenment itself?
A lot.
There was quite a considerable amount, don't you think? Yeah.
I mean, what's interesting with the Enlightenment is that it took place roughly within all the nations of Europe at the same time.
Yeah.
It had the same enemies.
What years do we bracket that with?
17th century, 18th century, into the 19th. But what's interesting is it always had the same enemies. And it's the same enemies for the Arab Spring.
Right.
The army,
which
was aristocratic and entitled and so on, and the church. And I'm not talking about this or that clergyman who was progressive and so on. That always existed. But in general, the institution of the church. What do you have in the Arab Spring? You have the army and the mosque.
Right.
And this is as much an ideological fight as an economic one.
You do?
Yeah. This is.
I always tend to see things economically. I should probably get out of that and get
another
broader way of thinking.
It's just a somewhat different perspective, and
we don't live in a world of economic determinism, do we? No, we don't. We should get over that. I'm talking to myself here now. You understand?
This is usually simply identified with Marx. But if you think about it, and you think about the subtitle of Das Kapital, right?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to think what it is.
Yeah, nobody bothers with that.
No.
It's called The Critique of Political Economy. It's not called the study of political economy.
Okay.
It's called the critique of political economy.
Okay. Right.
In other words, what it's up to us to do is figure out an alternative once we see how oppressive the existing form of economic development is.
But a lot of the economic theorizing that's informed the world after the Second World War, it's come out of Britain, come out of Lord Keynes. He had a way of making
great figure.
Yeah, and then you had Schumpeter, and there's entrepreneurialism coming up and all that. Have we finally got it together of understanding how are we going to? Well, let's say we got what, 7 billion? Is that heading for 9? I understand the UN says we're going to head for 9 billion apparently within the immediate time ahead. And we got all those people, and we got to weigh down how we're going to deal with the economic order in terms of forming capital and capital productive instruments, and how are we going to be able to distribute effective buying power to the masses of the people of those capital instruments in a way that is not only tied in to only their labor participation in production, but somehow in terms of the productive capability of the capital instruments themselves, and have a system that can have the people relate to the future earnings rather than only past savings, or some of these larger issues that were part of the economic system. And have we got it down now? Do we understand it? Is it within our reach?
Do we understand it?
No. Yeah. Is it within the realm of thinking potentialities that are there, that are latent? Like the latent. Did we talk about latent heat? Did we talk about that?
Yes, we did.
We did. On this air, I mean.
No.
Well, latent heat is heat that is in the tornadoes. It's latent. There's a capability existent in terms of the technological order, or the capability that is not obvious in terms of the immediate context of understanding it, but it's got a capability that has to be taken into account. And
your breadth of knowledge here is staggering.
No. It's just, have we got the system down?
No, I don't think so.
We don't. Okay.
Or at least what your latent possibilities. It's not clear. This much, I think everybody knows. I don't think you have to be an expert in economics to figure this out. Capitalists want labor to be as cheap as possible, so that they can have greater profits. Labor, or workers, want wages to be as high as possible, so that they can be compensated for their work the best.
That's what we've been arguing for a couple hundred years.
But that may be true.
Same old bullshit. I'm sorry, that's putting it a little too strongly. But that informs a great deal of the thinking of our leadership. That formula.
We mentioned Marx before. Marx spoke about the political economy of capital and the political economy of labor, and we have to make up our minds. I mean, of course, compromises are going to be necessary, but in a basic way, But in a basic way, we have to make up our minds: are we going to follow a people over profits approach, or workers over profits approach, or are we going to follow profit for its own sake as an approach? Wow. And here, this is one of those issues or choices where, when we talk about economic determinism, this, that, the other thing, we simply ignore the choices that are involved. These are political matters, and they're not taught.
But have we understood the practical matters of the reality of things? And I wonder, have you gotten into Thomas Piketty?
I'm no expert on economics. I've read the book.
You have?
Yeah.
How can you manage to read that? That is so intense. I gave up. It was all full of mathematical formulas. I could not begin to follow.
I'm going to give you you're not allowed to tell anybody. Your audience isn't allowed to tell anybody.
To hoop on that? What he's saying. I got an idea of what he's saying and presenting to the world leadership.
That's basically it. I can't do the math
Oh,
I don't
thank you.
follow. I can't follow.
Oh,
that.
I wouldn't have thought so.
But the arguments themselves, those I can follow. Those are,
Yeah, right.
you know, and he's a very progressive force.
Oh, yeah.
Professor Piketty, we have a very progressive force, and I think the social sciences needed somebody like that.
Yeah.
To push things along. It's not that this is so original. It's
okay. Let's get if we get an agreement on what he's saying to the world.
Yeah.
Do we have an agreement? You and I'm talking about.
Oh well.
As I understand it, well, what I think he's saying is that we have a capability to provide tremendous capability, exponentially new capabilities developing all the time, and among other things, we have a capability we said before of being able to have weapon systems that are able to be modeled in a way that can show that they are almost, if not, able to, in their collective capability, Trident submarines alone could almost it certainly could wipe out civilization and make us back. And it might be able to wipe out the entire species. That's an existential new reality. We have another capability collectively of the capability of providing for everyone within a context where you have exponentially increasing capability of providing life support for the masses of the population in a way that we've never had historically, to where there would be enough for everybody. But the main problem is they don't have a way, because the input of labor to the productive process, which is the way most all citizens, other than a few, have to depend on getting income to feed the kiddies, is to have what they call a labor relationship to a process that's being undercut by cybernetic displacement of labor. And that they don't have an alternate way of distributing effective buying power to the masses of the people to clear the market of what the capability latent is there waiting to be tapped, but they don't have a system because they're tied up in an old economic way of thinking. That's my understanding of Piketty.
Yeah, I think that
you need a new way of forming capital and distributing demand based upon maybe ownership of the capital instruments or something other than labor.
Well, that sort of stays out. See, a lot of these things, though, have been that you mentioned have been argued before. I think the reason this had such an impact was...
You mean Piketty now?
Piketty. Was for him to say what people already, I think, felt, which was that this period of economic boom, which made the United States the dominant country, that this is sort of a blip on the screen.
Well, okay, you're saying it a little bit different. Go ahead, talk. Spell it out.
The stuff you're talking about, I think a lot of this goes back to Marx, and a lot of this was discussed by figures in the '60s like Herbert Marcuse, even Michael Harrington. But what's interesting in the way you laid it out, and what I think captures the modern sensibility, is that the problem is one of cybernetics.
No, the cybernetics, that's part of a larger
which is displacing.
Displacing of the labor input to production.
That's
intellectual and physical.
That is something that you can find in the original Das Kapital.
Okay, fair enough.
The issue was, for Marx and for the entire labor movement as it developed, how do you do something about that?
Well, I like to
and now, hang on.
Yeah.
What the first step that was made was, and probably the best step that was made, was the creation of a social democratic party. Because then you can translate your numbers and your economic power into political power.
Yeah,
we don't have that.
Well, we have some.
One of the extraordinary things about Bernie Sanders,
God bless him.
is this is the first movement in it must be 75 years, that has put class at the center of the discussion, and that has put the contradiction I mentioned before, capitalists wanting the most, and pay the least, and workers getting clobbered and wanting more, greater wages. for Bernie Sanders, this is at the center of the discussion. And unless one has a concept of class like that, there's nothing you can do. It's like you're intellectually impoverished. You can't talk about this in terms of identity. You can't talk about this in terms of, I don't know, intersectionality or hybridity or all these different categories which are flying around. No, you have to have something that speaks to the production process. And Piketty, I think, restates that. I don't think there's anything new in that, but he restates it. And he makes it, and by noting that, or by exploding the myth that America is going to be on top forever. What he was able to do was explode the myth and restate some basic truths that have been established for about 150, 200 years.
And it's still to be faced, right?
Yeah.
Or still to be discussed.
And it's but what he doesn't do, see, I mean, and what, I mean, God knows he does a lot, and he's an important figure.
He's being read by the most economic leaders and political leaders of the world.
No question about it.
What he doesn't, chagrin.
With chagrin.
Yeah.
But what he doesn't do is provide, in some way, a sense of how the disenfranchised and the exploited can organize themselves. And what their program should be like.
Well, it might be if the leaders could organize themselves. The leaders themselves haven't been able to come up with an overall system that could allow something to happen that would be relevant to the future, dawning.
Part of the reason that I think the leaders that we have, and it's pretty pathetic, the leaders that we have, even on the left, haven't done that is because they don't have the categories, they don't have the intellectual tools.
Well, it may be because it's something brand new. It's like you're coming to the end of we're here 200,000 years as a species, 10,000 generations, and we may be at a time of qualitative transformation in the overall condition.
Or more concretely, how about this?
What? More concretely than that?
Yeah.
What? Yes.
They haven't read the stuff of the past.
Oh, well, that's true. Yeah, we haven't taken enough.
It's just, I'll tell you,
you're
one
right,
of the things
that has to be a grounding.
One of the things that you
or
see,
subsumed, maybe we subsume.
We just it doesn't even exist.
How does it happen in evolution that the new appears? What happens with the old?
There is an attempt.
Subsumed.
There's an attempt to deal with a new problem.
Yeah.
And we haven't even dealt with the old problem.
Right. We ought to get on with that, I think.
Indeed. But now the problem is that anybody who's been in academia, I think, knows this. What we're producing is disciplinary idiots.
There's a bigger problem.
Not intellectuals.
No, but in television, there's a bigger problem. It's called time. We've run out of time.
Oh, and that is tragic.
We're just getting to the point of actually answering the question that all the people have been after since the caveman, and we've run out of time.
That's it. It was a pleasure.
It's a trouble. It's a start, right?
I hope so. I hope so.
Stephen Eric Bronner, Board of Governors Professor. That's a distinguished professor. As you can see why, political and philosophy. Thanks, man. So good to see you.
Always a pleasure, Harold.